Hello and welcome to the Chronicles of Dragonlance podcast, where we go book by book, chapter by chapter, or at least, for the most part, through the Chronicles of Dragonlance, through every single book. But realistically speaking, we've only gone through the first book and part of the second one. Hopefully, God knows how long this goes on. We'll see how we go, but by God, we're going to finish at least this trilogy in Legends. We've been having a grand time. Of course, I am your host, Shivam, and with me, as always, my dear friend, John. Hey, John.
Hey, big dreams. Every book, big dreams.
Look, there's only 250 of them. It should be fine. We should finish by the time the heat death of the universe gets to us.
They write them faster than we can cover them.
To be fair, I don't think the other books in the series, except for like the first 6, which we in the olden days called the Holy 6, right? Aside from those, I can't imagine there's a lot of depth to go into, and most of the rest of them can kind of be covered in summary, but we'll get there when we get there. Right now, we're still here in Dragons of Winter Night, but before we get to that, I just got back from GenCon as of recording. I have to say, it ruled. As a Dragonlance fan, to be able to go to GenCon for the 40th anniversary, to be there for Book 3, Dragons of Eternity, that came out of the, I don't even know what they call it, the classic Dragonlance trilogy that I helped Margaret and Tracy write. It was awesome. And it was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had, just in terms of like I got there Wednesday night at 11, and I had to be up at 6 Thursday morning to be able to go to the panel with Tracy and everybody. So I went to the unboxing panel, which is early in the morning, where you bought your ticket and got your first copy of the book, and then Margaret and Tracy told stories of the olden days. Didn't actually talk about the book or the new trilogy at all, which, as a side note, next time they do panels, I'm going to go up there and actually moderate it and ensure that we talk about new things and not just the same stories. But it was interesting to hear stories of the olden days and what it was like to start telling these stories and be in a room full of people who were super excited for the Dragonlance book, to see again some of my really old friends from the old Dragonlance community, like Joe Meshuggah and Katie, whose last name I don't know that I've ever known, who've just been like my friends for 30 years now, 25 years or whatever, which is insane. And it was so delightful to hand these things out to people and to be like, hey, look, I worked on this. Then we went to the Margaret and Tracy's booth, set it up, and I got my copies of books 2 and 3. You know, I talked to Margaret's agent. I talked to all their friends. It was sick. And like Margaret and Tracy both took time to call me out as their Astonus and be like, yo, you know, we wouldn't be able to do this without Shivam. He keeps us connected and grounded to the setting. And I was like, they gave me like a 5-minute long, just glowing, like honorarium. And I was just like, I was
well earned, I'm sure. Well earned.
I was dying, man. It was like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, they were like, look, Dragonlance has progressed in 30 years and we haven't always been there, but he keeps us connected to the world and the setting and helps us, like, you know, drive forward and figure out where we fit again. And I'm like, that's so sick. Like, I'm like, wow, what a cool job. And they're like, that's my job. That's so cool. But Margaret was like, yeah, and I need you to come to the 40th anniversary panel on Saturday. And so I spent the rest of Gen Con with my family. We went out and played board games and bought a lot of board games and played a lot of board games and, you know, hung out with my Magic friends or whatever. And Saturday rolls around and I'm like, oh yeah, I got to go to the panel. So I just go and amble over. I was trying to figure out where it was or whatever. And I get there and I'm met by Christy, Margaret's agent. And she's like, great, you're here. You're late. You're on stage. And I'm like, I'm what? I'm where? I'm who? I thought I was just coming to visit and watch. And they're like, yeah, no, you are the thing being watched. And so like, I ran up there real quick where Jeff Grubb, Margaret, Tracy, Michael Williams, and their new editor, Alex from Penguin, were up there sitting and hanging out. And I was like, oh, you want me on there? And I run up there real quick and I go and I'm sitting down. Tracy's like, all right, you can introduce yourself. I'm like, oh, I'm just like a fanboy. I'm just, you know, here. Like 40 years ago, Tasselhoff said, like, don't change yourself to match the walls. Act like you belong and the walls will change to match you. And I was like, and now I'm up here with where I very much don't belong. And Tracy's like, if you're just a fanboy, then I'm just a dude who writes once in a while. And I'm like, what? And he's like, you're literally the reason we're here and the reason we can do this. Let me tell you, as a lifelong fan of Dragonlance, to be up on stage for the 40th anniversary, to do a panel of talking about our lives with this, and it's just like, it was so sick. Margaret and Tracy sat there and they were like with Jeff Grubb and Michael, and they were talking about like the history of what it was like to write these books on like mainframes and in the crappy old hotel they used to work at, and like some of the inspirations and things they did to get there. They got to me and I was like, look, man, I found Dragonlance. I was part of the mailing lists and the old news groups, but I'm here because this taught us the meaning of like hope, faith, found family, what it means to find acceptance. And it was just like I had, and also I got to talk about what it's like when Margaret calls me up and she's like, Shivam, I need to know the name of XYZ character. And I'm like, okay, well, here's the name of this character. And Margaret's like, that's a dumb name. Who came up with that? And I'm like, you did? And I'm like, you know how funny it is to moderate the argument between a person and their 40-year younger version of themselves? It was so cool. It was so much fun. And got to announce that there's a brand new trilogy coming out called Dragonlance Legacies, which is the first book is called War Wizard, which is about the story of Magus.
And who is Magus for listeners who aren't as versed in the...
Magus, of course, is like, the staff of Magus, like, Raceland's staff, the dude who first held it, Huma's best friend, the mage who died so that other mages could get weapons. He's considered like the greatest wizard in all of Dragonlance history, even though really it's less that he was great, powerful, or whatever. It's more that what he did and where he was made him great.
Mm-hmm.
As in like self-sacrifice, helping Huma defeat the Queen of Darkness, and there has been a lot of controversy about like, Huma, Rick Knack wrote the story of Huma and Magus like 30 years ago. The literal first book that came out after Legends was The Legend of Huma. The first non-Weiss and Hickman novel ever written about Dragonlance was The Legend of Huma. And people were really mad that Weiss and Hickman are disrespecting Knack and his story and everything. I kind of want to give a little context here, which is that they're not as connected as you think they ought to be to Dragonlance, in the sense of like, first off, The Legend of Huma was told multiple ways. There was a Michael Williams poem, there was a short story, there was the novel that was done. Then there was also the version that Tracy told in the Anvil of Time module, and other places like the first of the Dragonlance classics that they wrote. And the trick here is, ever since the beginning, Margaret and Tracy have been very, very careful not to play in other people's playgrounds, not to use other people's characters in their stories. So as much as we've always wanted crossovers between these characters and that characters, or crossovers between these stories and stuff, Margaret and Tracy never treated this kind of like a shared multiverse, and more of like other people are writing Dragonlance stories that are cool and we love them, but we're not going to be inspired by them or read them or get any sort of position that might accuse us of stealing their ideas.
Yeah.
Because that's a very important thing. That's a very core idea. A lot of novelists are like, look, I don't even read the genre that I write in because I don't want to be influenced by other people, or I don't want to look at my colleagues and start correcting their prose or start acting like I'm a better storyteller than they are. And these are all traps that you can fall into. And they're like, we didn't want that because we like Rick Knack. We've worked with him for decades, right? But they're like, look, we have an idea of a story we want to tell, and of a cool vision of what was it like for Huma and Magus within the context of our stories. And they effectively went and reset the timeline with this Dragons of Fate, Eternity, and etc.
The most recent series, they reset the timeline. Yeah.
Yeah. This is kind of giving them their opportunity to explore stories that they always wanted to tell in Dragonlance, but didn't get a chance to because of politics or because of any number of things, which is strange because when you look at the other authors in Dragonlance, the other authors treated it like a work for hire multiverse where I'm writing a story that is in the context of other stories. We will use other characters. We will use them as a shared IP. But because Margaret and Tracy created Dragonlance, they've always had this ownership idea of this is our trilogy. This is our series. There's this grand, it's one of the things I've learned from working with them is like, they really genuinely don't know the setting I'm not going to say they don't know the setting. Of course they know the setting, but they don't know it the way I know it or the way a fan knows it, of like, oh yeah, Elven nations happened, Dwarven nations happened, these characters did this and that. This is where all these towers and stuff come from.
They haven't read all 200 books. They haven't gone to the wiki and updated it or mined it for content.
Yeah. Like, remember, for a long time, Weiss and Hickman weren't even associated with TSR and Dragonlance. They were basically outcast and tossed out and didn't come back until they were like really asked to come back.
Yeah, they were writing other books, Deathgate,
They were writing other books, and they were like, look, our association with Dragonlance is done. Then they come back and write Summer Flame. Our association with Dragonlance is done. Then they come back and write, the other one, our associate, et cetera, et cetera. Every time they would come back, they would take a briefing to look over what's happened and see, like, okay, none of this matters to what I'm trying to do. Sometimes it's fine, like Summer Flame, it didn't matter what else was going on. But sometimes it's like the War of Souls, where it's very like, guys, you just like threw out all of this other work and didn't acknowledge it and turned it really messed up. But I mean, they're not perfect. They have their vision for the setting, and they're like, look, what we came back to isn't the Dragonlance we want, so we're going to change it. And that was hurtful and kind of not great, but it's also fine, right? Like, it happens. This sort of thing happens because this is a setting without a guide. It's a setting that has had multiple people piloting the ship. And when you do that, you're not going to have consistency all the way through, except for folks like you and I, the listener, who sit there and know this setting intimately. And that's part of why they called me on to help them with this series and these series going forward, is because they were like, look, we want to try to avoid that mistake that we made of just trampling over everything. In resetting the timeline, they're not invalidating what Knack wrote. They're not doing anything like that. They're just like, now we're building our own playground. And they're like, look, this is where we can sit there and write whatever we want in a separate, effective. I mean, this is, again, a lot of conjecture. It's a lot of hypothesis.
I like to think of it, or if it helps the listener think of it, is this could be, think of it as, what am I trying to say? Oh, like expanded universe from the old Star Wars fiction, right?
Right.
Where there were books back when they were tracking all this, there were books that said, like, this is core canon. This is the primary timeline. And then all the expanded stuff was like, this could be core, but it's not, but it could be. And it's still set in the world.
I think that's a really great.
Or like the timeline stuff, like the whole Deadpool 3 is all about this, right? Here's Deadpool version 8222 and 4567 and all these different universes. This new one, the Knack Huma is on one timeline, and this upcoming Margaret Weiss Huma is on another timeline. And they're both real and they're both valid. And the existence of both doesn't do anything to denigrate the existence of the other one.
Yeah, it was funny though, because like when Anvil of Time came out, I wrote to Tracy, I'm like, bro, you created Magus into like an older Merlin character to help Huma King Arthur, and he's like, that's how we envisioned it to being. And I'm like, yeah, in the actual canon, they're contemporaries and best friends and like of the same age. And so this time around, they reset that, but they were basically, look, people love Kaz, people love the creatures and like characters that Rick Knack had wrote, and we don't want to take that away from him. Margaret was like, I don't want my Kaz to invalidate what the buildup he's done.
Yeah.
And I thought that was like profoundly respectful. It's like, look, I want to tell the story of Huma, but I don't want to do it in a way that makes it look like I trampled over Knack. And so instead, she's just like, what if I don't? What if I tell the story as if I had never left Dragonlance? I don't know. I think it's going to be fun.
This could be easier, I think, in some cultures where there's not this insistence on some sort of canon and the real version of a story.
Yeah, like in Hinduism, there's like 7,000 Ramayans, right? Like there's like a million different iterations of the story of the primary god and what he did in his adventures.
Yeah.
Based on the culture you live in, the area you live in, the language you speak, whatever. And it's like, they're all fine. Nobody sits there and goes and argues about the canonicity of it. We're like, hey, that's a cool variant of the story, and I didn't know that. Maybe there's a lesson I can learn from here.
And there's not trying to like make it all fit, right? Like, oh, I'm going to take these 7,000 Rama stories and try to make them all fit into each other. It's like, that way lies madness.
You can't. It's like, I think Hinduism is like the first real shared pantheon of like just like ridiculous. Like, how do we make these stories work with each other? This story says Shiva killed Vishnu. This story says Vishnu killed Shiva. It's like, okay, well, we can't. Just hand wave it and accept it and move on. So that's the business of the gods. But it's like in Dragonlance, the real talk is all these old books that we love and read are not coming back to print. WotC doesn't print them. They don't have a publishing arm, and they're not interested in bringing them back. So they live on in our memories, in our canon, in our games, and our stories. And Margaret and Tracy have an opportunity to tell brand new stories. And Rick Knack just got the chance to write his own brand new Humus and Kaz story that was put out by the Dragonlance Nexus with their new module or whatever. And both of these are equally canonical. Like, it's fine. Honestly, my bottom line is more Dragonlance stories are good. I don't care how.
what is that? Let a thousand blooms, something like let a thousand blooms flourish. Like each story can be its own thing, and they can both be there, and we want more of it. So
I'm just really excited that like Penguin Random House is basically like, we're going to republish omnibus editions of Chronicles and Legends. We want new kids to be able to come to this world and discover what it's like, learn about Dragonlance. I'm like, that's so good. Thank you. Finally.
That was my big question. Do you see any young people at any of the Dragonlance panels?
I mean, I was not sitting in any position to look because I was either on the side handing things out or I was at the stage and it's just a blur of people. Real talk, no. If you're coming to the 40th anniversary panel for Dragonlance, you are an existing fan.
Yeah, I was hoping we might see some kids, some children, and
there were definitely kids there with their parents or people who had like started to learn it and stuff.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite things that happened in GenCon, though, I was walking by and I saw somebody, like I bumped into someone and they had a copy of Legends. And I was like, oh man, I love that cover art. And so like, oh, did you know they're signing over there? And they just wrote a new book. And I was like, that's really cool. I should go check it out. Thank you so much.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I want Dragonlance to keep living. I don't want it to die with.
I don't want it to be a dead setting.
40-year-olds.
I think Dragonlance has a lot to teach and a lot to share. And I'm very, very excited to see what they do. And I'm super excited to take part in what's coming up, going forward. And it's just like I said on the panel, I'm like, look, having Margaret call you and ask you questions about Dragonlance is exactly as cool as you think it is. Being able to sit there and come up with names and stories and help her like design magical artifacts or figure out what dragons existed when is exactly what child me dreamed I could do. And I'm stoked and thrilled to be able to do it.
So do we have a timeline of when the new, like 2025, 2026, when the...
I think it's 25 or I think it's 26 because I think they're
okay, 26 for the first new book.
I don't know for sure. We should check sometime. I don't know. Margaret has more details on it. Like I only get the manuscripts, man. One of the things I'm very excited about is actually reading the final versions of the books. Because they changed a lot from the versions I read. Because obviously, I read a version of the book, I give a detailed summary and content, like commentary about what's going on and everything, and then they take they take the feedback and they go and rewrite the book or whatever. And I don't see a final copy because that's not my business. And then the book comes out and people are talking like, "Oh my god, did you see X or Y? Like, why would you let them do this thing?" I'm like, I genuinely don't know because I didn't see that manuscript, but it's sweet. Who cares, man? I'm stoked to be here.
Very exciting.
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
There are some pictures on our Facebook group that Shivam posted there.
Yeah.
Take this chance. The link to the Facebook group is in the show notes and you can head on over there and see. But today we're also talking about Chapter 5 of Dragons of Winter Night, Silvara.
Yeah. With one of the hottest interchapter pictures ever.
Yeah. I don't know if that's getting reprinted in the new omnibus.
Oh, no. They're reprinting all the original art and everything.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Because it's like, they're not changing. I was like, and Margaret and Tracy were like, we're not changing a word. I'm like, so you mean that the guards are still going to be swinging around hauberks instead of halberds? And they're like, look, if we start tinkering with it, then who knows where we'll end. And it's better if we just leave it as is. And I'm like, there's definitely things I would change about these books. Like the fact that there were things that they wrote in these books that they had not settled upon that they later settled on, like Dumok versus Dulok for turning off the Staff of Magus or like things like that. That's not the point. This is meant to be a historical record, not a retelling. Because like we could rewrite the stories, but that's not the zeitgeist and the voice of a 20-year-old, desperate to avoid poverty, Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman. That's like, 80-year-old, we've lived a life, Tracy and Margaret, and that's a different story.
Yeah.
I think it's better if they leave it the way it was.
All right. So complete as is with the
original interstitial art and everything, to the best of my knowledge.
The outline nude art of Silvara in a bath or in a pool.
It's hot. It's okay for things to be hot. That's fine. We start this chapter with our boy Gilthanas, who is one of my favorite characters in the setting later on. And he's sitting there and he's sore and tired and sleeping and cannot sleep to save his life. He just he stops and he stares at Laurana and he's like, man, what the hell is going on with her? She was she's not the girl who I grew up with. She's like hard and old and like, has a lot of like stress and stuff. And it turns out, yeah, when you grow up, when she's not the princess anymore. I mean, Laurana left Qualinost and went through a lot in the 3 months or so between the times they saw her. Like, the dragons, the slaves, the death of Solace, the red dragons, everything. And I'm like, she has seen a lot and she has come back very different. She's just back from going to Icewall and seeing some of her dear friends just die, right?
Yeah.
Like, that was not a thing that baby Laurana dealt with.
She's been given direction by her mentor
Mm-hmm.
in the previous chapter where Elistan was like, no, it's all you. You got this. I need to stay here and convince the elves that Paladine has returned and they should join him.
Yep.
But I believe in you. You got this. So like, it's handing off. You don't need a mentor anymore. You get to be the manager.
Yeah. And he's also like, man, who even is this girl? She's like, he's still thinking about the fact that she's been off with other men, which is like tainting her. And he sits there and goes like, my dad's right. I believe him. And then he's like, wait, do I believe him? Because I'm here with Laurana. Maybe I don't believe him. And now he's angry because he doesn't know what he believes anymore. And he doesn't know.
Well, and he's like, I even like Tanis now. I don't know what's going on. Like, I wish elves could be as noble as Sturm.
Yeah. And he's like,
Gilthanas is having a real crisis of all his assumptions in life.
Of identity and faith, right? It's almost as if you go out and meet other people and learn their things and realize that your xenophobia doesn't work anymore.
The people aren't stereotypes. They're actual people.
Yeah. You can't. One of the big things about this is like, you cannot judge a group by its individuals and you cannot judge an individual by their group.
Yeah.
I got to say, like, Margaret and Tracy really did a lot of very interesting work in these books about talking about racism and talking about sexism and classism in a way that was appropriate for 1984. And it's kind of wild to think about.
And appropriate for genre fiction. It never feels preachy and it never feels like they're like saying, this is why racism is bad. It's much more like just...
No, it's always just within context.
Yeah. He's having a little crisis here because he doesn't know why he's run off with his sister and what are basically rebels when he's been talking all this time. He wanted to go home. Well, here he was back with his people and he immediately left again. And he's like, why? Why did I do this?
Yeah, it's like, what am I even thinking? But I love this one line here, right? Like, he sits there and he's like, he'd felt hatred of other races beginning to die. He'd known few elves as noble as self-sacrificing as a human Sturm Brightblade. And though he didn't like Raceland, he envied the young mage's skill. It was something Gilthanas, a dabbler in magic, had never had patience or courage to acquire. Finally, he had to admit he even liked the Kender and grumpy old dwarf. But he had never thought he would fall in love with a wilder elf.
What?
That's like, that's real humdinger right there. And he's like, there, I've admitted it. I love her. And I'm like, that is super weird, though. He's known her for like a week.
Is he like a teenager, though? Is this?
He is definitely a young adult.
Because this feels like teen love, right? Where you're 16 and you walk into your first freshman or sophomore class and there's that one girl who's sitting up front and you're like, oh, wow, she's so beautiful. I love her. Like, it does seem like a little childish infatuation.
Yeah, it definitely feels that's exactly what it is. Like, he felt like, it's like, you leave your home for the first time and he's out in the world and the first hot chick he meets, he totally falls in love with. It's a little weird, a little kind of campy, but Margaret has always admonished me about this. And she's like, don't you believe in like true romance? And like, it's okay for people to just have love at first sight and stuff. I'm like, Margaret, that's not how the world works. She was like, oh, shut up, man. You don't know.
She's more of a romantic than you are, Shivam.
Definitely much more of a romantic than I am. And I'm like, okay, you know what? It's a story. Fine. But even like the authors, though, were like, immediately after, I was like, well, was it love, you wondered, or simply physical attraction? And at that, he grinned, thinking of Silvara with her dirt-streaked face, her filthy hair, her tattered clothes. My soul's eye must be seeing more clearly than my head, he thought, glancing fondly over at her bedroll. And then, of course, he looks at her bedroll and realizes it's empty, and he's like, wait, what the hell's going on? So he looks around the camp, and he's like, uh-oh, she's not here. There's no one here. What's going on? So he goes off to look for her. He's quiet. He's trying to make sure to avoid Sturm and Derek, who are off standing watch. he looks for the dragon orb to make sure it hasn't gone anywhere, and it's still there. Thank you. And so he's like, oh, okay, phew, I don't have one more traitor in my mist. And then he hears water splashing. So he goes over there. This is one of the coolest scenes in the book, I think. Listening carefully, he determined it wasn't a fish or nightbird diving for its catch in the river. And of course, Sturm and Derek are too human to be able to hear what's going on. So he creeps away, going towards the water. He's using his stealth and his nature checks here to make sure that he can quietly go through the forest. And he comes through a place where the water, flowing among the rocks, had become trapped in a small pool. Here, Gilthanas stopped, and his heart almost stopped beating because he had found Silvara. A dark circle of trees starkly outlined against the racing clouds. The silence of night was broken only by the gentle murmurs of the silver river, which fell over the rock steps into the pool, and the splashing sounds that had caught at Gilthanas' attention. Now he knew what they were. Silvara was bathing. Oblivious to the chill in the air, the elf maid was submerged in the water. Her clothes lay scattered on the bank next to a frayed blanket. Only her shoulders and her arms were visible to Gilthanas' elven sight. Her head was thrown back as she watched the long hair that trailed out behind her, floating like a dark cobweb in the darker pool. The elf lord held his breath, watching her. He knew he should leave, but he held fast, entranced. Yeah, of course he's not going to leave. Come on. He's not going to leave. Are you kidding?
This is such a trope. Almost every high fantasy epic series I can think of has a scene where at least two people who fall in love with each other eventually meet in a pool, and it's awkward and or it's racy and or
it's an anime trope, it's a fantasy trope, it's a writing trope.
Yeah.
We need an excuse for these two to be naked together.
Or for one of them to be naked for the other one to admire.
Yeah. It's a little off-putting, but at the same time, the way they write it is so innocent. And it's like Margaret and Tracy do not do salacious. They don't do like none of their characters, unless they're being like real evil people, are here to be like rapey tropey type. This is just there's something about this that just has a more charming feel to it than a creepy feel. Though it's very easy for this to become like, ooh, look at the stalker who's just like peeping.
Yeah. I don't think it's salacious. I might rewrite it today, but I think it was fine for the 80s.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think given how they wrote this thing, the clouds parted, Solinari, the silver moon, though only half full, burned in the night sky with a cold brilliance. The water in the pool turned to molten silver. Silvara rose out of the pool, her silver water glistening on her skin, gleamed in her silver hair, ran in shining rivulets down her body that painted in silver moonlight. I'm like, that is cool. That is poetic.
He gasps, and then instead of trying to hide it, she gathers her stuff, and then he apologizes. He's like, hey, it's me. I'm sorry. Your bedroll was empty, so I came looking for you. I saw what was going on, and I made a noise, so my bad.
Yeah. First off, though, that scene is so tropey right there. That's such of course she stands up and you see the full body of the rivulet. And it also makes me think of the fact that it must be so weird to live on Ansalon where everything is just red or silver all the time at night.
Yeah, creepy.
Our moonlight is kind of whitish, generic, light, right? And think about if everything was just silvery or everything was red. What would it be like if everything was red at night all the time?
Yeah, very weird.
Just super weird. Or if you're in the wrong place and one half the street is red and one half is silver because the moon is being blocked by a building. Anyways, Gilthanas is totally caught up by this loveliness. He's enthralled. Silvara is none of that. She grabs a knife and she's like, what the hell's going on? Gil has a point. Why can't she see her? With Elven sight, she should be easy to spot. Now, Elven sight is multiple different things, right? It was either I can see into the infrared and see the heat vision of people moving around, or I can see the outline of them walking, or I can just have really good shadowy vision, or whatever it is, low light vision. People could never really figure out what it's meant to be. It was just elves see better in the dark.
Yeah.
And why can't Silvara see me? This is, I think, a continuity error on their part, because dragons also have the equivalent of elven sight.
Oh, spoilers, if you haven't already picked up on it.
Yeah, but it's more like she should be able to see him. She's got all of the different senses. She should be able to see him as an elf, as a whatever.
Yeah.
For some reason, she doesn't see him.
He calls it out. He's like, why can't she see me? This is so weird. And then she's about to run and he gets distracted and says, hey, don't flee.
Don't leave. I'm here.
It's just me. You shouldn't be alone. And all I can think is that I've seen the map and like I know where Urgoth is. And I'm like, shouldn't she be freezing? Shouldn't that water be freezing? And she is wet and standing out, and she's wet and it's windy and it's cold. Like she should be freezing.
Yeah, it's the middle of the night and you're in an ice cold pool that's got water coming off the glaciers or whatever. But at the same time, she's a wild elf and maybe they have better resistance. I don't know, but that is also a thing that I think they forgot that this is winter night. Yeah, so Silvara, though, takes a step back. She doesn't move her to dress herself. She doesn't run away. She's just got a knife and she's like, look, if you're messing with me, I will cut you and kill you.
Yeah.
And of course, Gil starts just babbling. He's definitely in full thrall mode.
Yeah, he's just unloading all his trauma on her.
Yeah, he's definitely feeling super guilty. He's feeling super weird right now because he's like, oh man, this chick I really like is dead naked right there. It's not like he's had a lot of experience with women. And if he has, it's been with, noble women and stuff who were looking at him like a prince or, whatever it is, the courtship rituals of the Kagonesti court. His older brother's not married, so obviously he's not. So Gil's definitely got like very little experience here. And he just starts talking, not knowing what he was saying. And he's like, what am I even doing here? My dad needs me, my people need me, but I'm breaking the law. My people are in exile. I find the one thing that could help them, the dragon orb, but now I'm risking it to take it away. Why? What am I doing to my people? Blah, blah. And yeah, he's just like straight trauma dumping on her because he doesn't know what he's saying and he's kind of like full baffle mode, right?
She's super calm. She's like,
yeah.
Forgive me, I didn't mean to involve you in my troubles. I don't understand what is it I must do. I only know that you must do it, Silvara finished for him. And then he keeps talking. What have I done is against all elven custom. When my sister told me of her plot to steal the orb, I should have gone directly to my father. I should have sounded the alarm. I should have taken the orb myself. And she looked down at him and she's like, why didn't you?
Yeah.
She's just like, okay, trauma dump, but like, let's get to the point here.
And then Gil, takes a deep breath and he's like, look, I knew my people are wrong. Laurana's right. Sturm is right. Taking the orbs to the human is right. We got to fight in this war. My people are wrong. Their laws, their customs are wrong. I know this in my heart, but I can't make my head believe it. It torments me. And Silvara is like walking over and she's like, look, I understand. My own people, with a heavy pause in between, do not understand what I do or why I do it, but I understand. I know what's right and I believe in it. And then, of course, they sit there. Gil's like, look, I love you. You seem alone as I am. Please, Silvara, you will never be alone again. I swear it. And she lifts her hand towards his.
And they kissed.
Yeah. Too late, the wild doe realized that she was trapped. I love that line. He's like, not by the man's arms, but by her own love for the man that had ensnared her. Margaret in the annotated chronicles, right? She's like, I was making a hash of this love scene. I wanted to get on with the war. Tracy wrote this scene instead because she was like, I didn't know how to do this.
And he did a good job.
Yeah, no, he wrote a great one. This is a beautiful chapter. It really genuinely is.
All this here is even greater once you've read the next 3 chapters.
Yeah.
All of it makes way more sense. It was her own love for this man that had ensnared her, that this love for her was deep and tender, sealed their fate. He was trapped as well. And you're like, trapped in what? Like, what is the big deal here? And then it's like, oh,
yeah,
I see what the big deal is 3 chapters from now.
Yeah, we'll get there. But it's like, what was I even going to say? I don't know. They're crying. They know that they're in trouble. They know that this is not going to work the way they want. And yet they're so fully enamored with each other.
Also, she's naked this entire time, folks. Don't forget that this entire time.
He held the blanket clasped around her body with one hand.
Okay.
But felt her other hand, close around his. And she's kissing him. And then he realizes she's crying. And she's like, oh, no, don't. I'm sorry. And she's like, no, my tears aren't because I'm frightened of you. They're only for myself. You can't understand. Reaching out, she shyly puts one hand around his neck and drew him near. And then, of course, Silvara's blanket slips unnoticed into the stream. And it's like, oh, man, that's so sick. When you're 13, 14, 15, or whatever, this is the hottest thing in the world. There's something to be said about writing a love scene without going into detail like that just kind of lets the reader imagine what's going to happen. That just makes it all the better because you're imagining the best thing for you that could be enjoyable here.
Yeah. In general, your imagination is usually much more
robust.
The writing could ever be, right? It's the same with like horror, right? Horror movies and horror stories are their best right up until they start describing what the monster is, because then it's on screen.
Exactly.
And you see it and you're like, oh, it's not that scary.
Yeah, and it's like Tracy makes a note. It's like Margaret used to say that when we were asked how we write together, that she wrote all the big blood and guts scenes, and the hottest love scene we ever wrote was penned by me. Not much for stereotypes. She also used to say that my wife Laura and I were the last of the true romantics. Margaret writes terrible love scenes, which is funny for somebody whose favorite genre is like, romance and classical literature and stuff. And it's like, but I mean, what you like to read isn't always what you like to write.
Yeah.
That's fair and fine.
That's how the chapter ends, with the kissing and the embrace.
It is such a good interstitial chapter after all of the drama and all of the heartache Laurana is going through, and like the trauma with her father and everything. We get this beautiful little just romance moment that sets up so much. And God, it's such a poetically written scene. I don't know. I'm a big fan.
Yeah. And it's a little break, and we need it because chapter 6, Pursuit, a Desperate Plan, gets us right back into the action. But before we go there, just want to mention to everyone that we now have a Patreon. And for those who want to support the podcast, benefits include seeing show notes and getting a shout out. And you can find details at www.patreon.com/Chronicles of Dragonlance podcast. And quick shout outs to our $5 patrons: Alexander Louis, Nicholas Campo, Swar Dango, Chris and Drew, Jason Bledsoe, Brandon Brown, John Merlino Jr., and Jane Newif. And some of those are new patrons, so thank you. And if I got your name wrong, please send me a DM and I can correct it.
And you can join our Discord as well, and we can sit and talk about the episodes in Dragonlance in detail. But moving on to Chapter 6, A Desperate Plan. One of the things Tracy is very good at is what he calls a boot scene, which is like the blanket drops into the river, the curtain drops, and then the next day you wake up and they're putting their boots on. He's just like, we're writing for children or for young adults. He's just going to skip the rest of that. So we jump to noon of the next day. Companions basically have hit a part of the river where they can no longer have the boats because it's too shallow and too like rocky and gnarly looking. So they bring the boats up to the bank, and they run into a group of Kagonesti coming out of the woods, and they're carrying with them the body of 2 elven warriors. They draw weapons and are getting ready to attack, but Theros and Silvara spoke to them and are like, yo, chill out. But Theros and Silvara come back. They're like, look, our people are going to do nothing to help us. They've been attacked by lizardmen twice in the last 2 days, and they blame the coming of this new evil with humans who they say brought with them here in a white-winged ship. And Laurana's like, that's ridiculous. Didn't you tell them about the draconians, Theros? And Theros like, look, man, I tried, but the evidence is against you. They saw a white dragon above your ship. They didn't see you drive her off. So, yeah. Look, they'll let us through because Silvara and I pledged our lives to your good conduct. So please kindly don't get us killed.
Yeah, but they won't assist us. And I think it says like, oh, they might even sell us out if it's in their best interest. But if someone asks them, they might be like, oh, yeah, they went that way.
Yeah. Laurana's like, what? It's Southern Urgoth being invaded? And she's like, no, probably not. The High Lords will probably hope the elves will save them the trouble of a war by destroying each other. It's like, that's not the worst tactics in the world, right? But Derek is like, no, the Dragon High Command isn't ready to attack Urgoth yet. They're still trying to get control of, the north and like
the mainland.
Well, yeah, the mainland and everything. And Urgoth is still off in the periphery. So that's why the remaining knights can still make it to Sancrist to deal with the orb and to call a Council of the Whitestone.
What is the Council of the Whitestone exactly? Is that just the heads of the Solemnic orders?
We will see.
Oh, okay.
Right now, what we know is that there's a meeting of a council at a place called Whitestone.
Okay.
The Whitestone Council is like a very core part of this book later on. But it's effectively, I mean, from what we can gather from Derek, it basically sounds like the knighthood, right?
Yeah.
They start going forward and they're traveling up, and Theros is like, yo, I've never been over here. I don't know what's going on. But Silvara has a goal and she's guiding them. And Laurana's none too happy about this. She gets something had happened between her brother and the girl when she saw them share a sweet secret smile. Huh. So Silvara had found time among her people to change her clothes, and now she was dressed like a Kagonesti woman with a long leather tunic over leather breeches. Her hair was washed and combed, and everybody could see how she came by her name. Her hair was a strange metallic silver that flowed from a peak on her forehead to fall over her shoulders. And suddenly she's now cleaned up. She's not just like the little wild servant that lives with them. She's like fully human, I mean, fully into her own person, more capable than literally anybody else out here.
How dirty would your hair have to be for people not to know it was silver?
Well, think about the fact that it's just like it's coated in like,
Or maybe she was wearing like a cover, like a something over her head.
well, that like just mud and filth and like grime and stuff. Maybe the silver poked through, but nobody was paying attention to it. They were probably just like,
She was just a dirty wild elf before.
yeah, she's just like a dirty urchin or whatever. And you're like, what's going on?
Playing to stereotypes, right? If I'm what people expect me to be, they don't really look twice.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's like, look, you look like you're a dirty, unwashed maid, so I'm just not going to pay more attention to that. And so they're walking up forward. They find a cave that Silvara's like, here's where we can spend the night. It's like, we should have left the pursuit behind us because they're being chased by or tracked by somebody. And nobody knows the mountains as well as I do. So they go into the caves and they camp out.
Can't light a fire because they don't want it'll sitting at the mouth of a cave. If there's a fire inside it, it'll just be a beacon.
Yeah, if there's like smoke going up, everybody will know. Yeah, exactly.
It's a beacon. Let's just go there. That's where they are. They're all exhausted. They've spent the entire day hiking up this mountain. So they set watch and they're about to go to bed. And Laurana and Silvara both insist on taking turns. Night passed quietly. The only sound they heard was the wind howling. But by the next morning, when Tasselhoff goes out, he hurries back inside and says that there are people out there. And he says, I didn't realize this reading it the first time, but like Theros pushed aside the huge boulder they had rolled across the mouth of the cave, and the companions crept after Taz. He led them to a stop not 20 feet from the cave and pointed grimly at the white snow. On it were footprints fresh enough that the blowing, drifting snow had not... Like, how strong is Theros that he can just roll a boulder in front of the cave? Like, wow.
He's a blacksmith, man. He has to hammer a lot of things. And he's got the silver arm.
Yeah.
The silver arm gives him insane strength, right? Like, that thing, it makes him very, very, very powerful. And I think one of the things I've always hated is that they just don't really go into Theros, his silver arm, and what the deal is here with all this. I think they kind of wanted to leave it a little nebulous and not kind of get distracted by a side note, but it still is one of those things where I'm like, man, I wish we'd had his story. And I don't just mean the Theros novel. I know it exists.
And so they said, like, oh, they must have passed us, but we can't stay here. Let's go. Flint has a good idea. He's like, we should just wait here for them to come back, and then we can ambush them and get this over with.
Yeah.
Laurana and Silvara are like, no, we can't do that. There can't be. Laurana caught hold of Sturm. It must not come to bloodshed, she whispered.
Yeah.
Derek says, like, we should just stop him here. He agrees with Flint. And then Laurana's like, no, like, we're trying to build peace between the races here, and that's not going to happen if we start slaughtering elves.
And Derek's like, look, we can't let the elves stop us from going to Sancrist. You know, everybody knows that Sancrist is like the last stronghold of the Solomnics. It's the place where they have their headquarters. And Laurana, being, you know, an elven noble, knows this. So yeah, she's like, look, I get it. You're right, but we can't have you killing my people.
Yeah, she's unwilling to fight her own people, even if it comes to that.
Yeah. And then she sees movement in the back and she sees Silvara. She's like, what are you doing? And Silvara's kneeling in the darkness, fiddling with something on the cavern floor. And she's like, nothing. I'm just gathering my things. But behind Silvara on the cold floor of the cave, Laurana thought she saw the dragon orb. And before she could look more closely, Silvara drops her cloak over it. Laurana's like, what the hell, man? So she walks over. Silvara grabs her and she's like, we got to hurry and go. And Laurana's like, let go of me. You don't get this. She goes back and she looks down. She sees nothing that makes sense, just a tangle of twigs and barks and charred wood. And she's like, there, whatever message you left for your friend will be difficult to do now.
Yeah, she kicks it around.
She's like, oh, this looks like a secret message or something. She does not trust Silvara at all.
Yeah.
And she was prepared for any reaction, you know, anger, shame, whatever, attacking. But Silvara began to tremble and starts to look sorrowful and crying. And it's like, oh, wait, what? What's going on? And Lauren's like, am I being too suspicious?
And then she's like, of course not. She was using the dragon orb. That's the most suspicious thing ever.
Yeah. But she's like, that's weird. This is weird. Everything is weird. But then arrows start shooting and thunking over the trees over Derek's head. They're like, oh, the elves. And Derek's like, Brightblade, let's go. Lauren's like, nope, there's no killing. We're not going to fight. And Derek's like, you're insane. Stop. Another arrow comes by. Thunk, thunk, thunk. these guys run off to the pass. Laurana's like, look, they're not aiming to kill us. If they were, you'd be dead by now. So let's run anyways. We can't fight here. Sturm's like, put your sword away or you're going to have to fight me first. And Derek's like, you are a coward.
Well, yeah, this is some bad news for Sturm right here, because Sturm sides against Derek, who, if Sturm was a
knight,
he would be the lowest knight, and Derek is the highest knight, right? He's a Order of the Rose
by a lot, yeah.
And so he's like disobeying a direct order from Derek.
He's disobeying a direct order from his commander.
Yeah, and Derek straight up says, like, he tells Derek, if you want to fight elves, you're going to have to fight me first.
And he pulls his sword.
Yeah.
Pulls his sword, and I'm like, idiot, what are you doing?
Derek calls Sturm from running from enemies, and Sturm says, no, we're running from friends. Derek backs down, right? So part of Derek might be afraid of Sturm.
Well, I mean, when a guy's got a loaded sword pointing in your face, and you're like, look, Derek is not an idiot. He is crazy, and he's like self-serving, but he also knows, like, getting into a fight with my own team right now is moronic, right? Like,
yeah, well, and it won't get the orb where he needs it, right? So he's like, whatever, you're still a coward. I still hate you. It basically says that, like, he's just staring daggers of hatred at Sturm.
Yeah.
So they start fleeing up the mountain again.
And Laurana is just huffing and puffing, and they're having a hard time trying to climb up the mountain. Sturm is like, they're all like basically overloaded and trying to climb very steep mountain paths, and they're just dying. And Laurana's like, I gotta rest. And Silvara's like, no, just a few more feet, keep going. The Wild Elves dragged Laurana forward, and dimly she was aware of Sturm helping Flint, and they kept going and got to the top of the pass. They sink down and just like collapse. And she looks at the Silvara and she's like, man, where does this chick get her strength? What's going on? We're all too exhausted and we're dying. And Silvara's like, we got to split up. And Laurana's like, I beg the hell your pardon.
Once again, we're splitting the party.
Yeah, and it's like, Gilthanas like, no, that's not. And he can't get to his feet. He'd still collapse. Silvara said, look, listen to me. The elves are too close and they're going to catch and we got to fight or surrender. And Derek's like, we'll fight. And he's like, collapse over. And Silvara's like, look, there's a better way. You got to take the dragon over to Sancrist. We will draw off the pursuit. And everybody else is like, wait, what? And they think about it and they're like, huh, you mean we can get rid of Derek and get the orb to where it needs to go? And Sturm is like, I don't think one person should be charged with such a grave responsibility. Two of us should go. And Derek's like, meaning yourself, Brightblade? And Laurana's like, yeah, of course Sturm should go, if anyone. And Silvara's like, I'll draw you a map. The way is not difficult. The outpost of the night's only 2-day journey from here. And Sturm's like, we can't fly. What about our tracks? And she's like, look, I'll make an avalanche. Theros will throw boulders. We can make it work. And Gilthanas will make an avalanche with his magic. And everybody's like, are you, what the hell is going on? And Silvara's like, look, we got to let ourselves get caught so that they stop chasing the dragon orb. I will get them to follow us. And Laurana's like, follow us where? I don't know. What are you even talking about? And Silvara's like suddenly like, I know a place. It's a secret only known to my people. I'll take you there. Please, we got to hurry. There isn't much time. And Derek's like, look, I will take the orb. I will go alone. Sturm, you go with your group. You will need a fighter. Laurana's like, we have fighters. Theros, my brother, the dwarf, and Taz. Basically, Laurana's like, no, Sturm's got to go with Derek. This is ridiculous. And Flint's like, look, dude, I agree. We're not in danger. You guys need to go because the dragons who are hunting the orb. You guys need 2 fighters or whatever. And Silvara's like, we'll be safe without the orb. It'll be you in danger. Great, go, bye. And Sturm's like, all right, well then I will go Derek. And Derek's like, if I order you to stay behind? And Sturm's like, you have no authority over me. Have you forgotten? I'm not a knight.
There was a painful, profound silence. Derek stared at Sturm intently. No, he said, and if I have my way, you never will be. Sturm flinched, as if Derek had struck him a physical blow. Then he stood up, sighing heavily. Derek had already begun to gather his gear. Man, just right there. It's just like everything Sturm wants in his life, he's being told, you won't get.
Yeah.
But still, he knows what it means to be a true knight.
Yeah.
He knows the oath he's taken in his heart, and that still means that he won't. He's like, look, I got to follow the actual tenets of my faith, not the outward showing of my faith.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what you say. I'm a knight.
Right.
Whether you say so or not, Derek.
Sturm's like, look, man, I may get excommunicated for this, but I need to bring this orb to these people. I need to do this. This is what my morals and my ethics are telling me to do.
Yeah.
So fine. If it is a trade-off between my moral standing and my ethics and my compass and this order that I want to belong to, I will take my moral compass every day of the week. And that's like a really profound statement, right? Like that's a really solidly, like Sturm knows that by doing this, by pissing Derek off, he is just screwing himself out of his one and only desire. But he's like, look, man, this is what the teachings have taught me. And if I'm not my teachings, who am I?
Yeah. Derek starts gathering up his stuff and he's getting ready to leave. And he's like, look, Sturm, if you're coming, I'm not waiting for you. And Sturm tells Laurana, he's like, hey, you could come with us. Tanis might be in Sancrist. And Laurana says, nah, I got to keep an eye on Silvara.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, something's not right with that wild elf. And then she asks Sturm, she's like, are you going to be okay around Derek? And Sturm says, like, oh, Solamnian politics are wild. If Derek returns alone from the wilderness with a dragon orb, it'll be even more suspicious. I don't have time to get into it.
Sturm is basically, look, if Lord Derek Crownguard comes out of this scary, horrifying mess carrying the salvation of humanity, it is sealing his, like, his promotion.
Oh, he's like, I have to go and let him know that it wasn't him who did it.
Yeah, exactly.
It was the 2 other knights that died and a bunch of non-knights.
Yeah, he's like, I've got to go there to make sure the story is straightly told and not just like, the hero coming out of the woods, right?
Derek just doesn't lie and say, it was all me, I did it.
Oh, yeah, he knows exactly that if Derek goes, he's going to be able to say whatever he wants and do nothing. And if Sturm goes, everybody knows that Sturm's a man of his word. And so they're like, okay, fine. So that's a really fascinating bit of realpolitik right there.
Well, and then we learn more about the Council of Whitestone because Sturm says, oh, once the council is called, elves will be invited. They are members of the council. So this must be like a big deal council.
Yeah.
Interracial council.
It's basically like NATO.
Okay.
In the sense of like, it's like the Knights of Solamnia have in their headquarters a sort of meeting of like, various races in case they need to for purposes of political or just conversation. It was probably more important before the cataclysm and everybody stopped talking to each other, but it is a thing that exists. As in, like, periodically they send a diplomat to come there and like just talk about nation building issues. Sturm is like, get to the Whitestone as soon as you can. And Lauren's like, dude, I'll be there. God's willing. It's like, hopefully I'm not going to die. And so he says goodbye and he plunges into snow after Derek. Laurana is like, wait, I got to stop them. They should take the Dragonlance. And Silvara's like, hell no.
And Laurana's like, why? It doesn't make sense. Why give them the orb and not the Dragonlance?
Yeah, and Silvara didn't answer. She just shrugs and stares at Laurana with eyes bluer than midnight. And Laurana is just like being drained by those blue eyes. She was reminded terrifyingly of Raceland. Gilthanas, too, stared at Silvara with a perplexed and worried expression. And like Theros is standing there and everybody's looking and they're all completely under Silvara's control. And they're like, what'd she do to them? She's just standing there. What's going on? They could only stand and stare at the wilder elf as she walked calmly to where, Laurana had put her pack down. And she takes the Dragonlance and raises it in the air. Sunlight flashes on Silvara's hair, mimicking the flash from Sturm's shield. The Dragonlance stays with me, Silvara said. Glancing swiftly around at the spellbound group, she added, as do you.
Yeah, ooh. The transition of Silvara here from scrawny, wilder elf made healer to like this person of power is real dramatic over these last 4 chapters, and it gets even more dramatic in next episode in chapter 7 and chapter 8. So, and ominous, right?
Yeah.
The Dragonlance stays with me.
Oh, yeah. It's suddenly like, huh.
As do you.
Yeah, like, wait, whoa, what's going on there? And we're in for some hella pivotal change. But with that, my friends, this episode of Chronicles of Dragonlance podcast comes to an end. Thank you so much for joining me today, John. Thank you all for listening. And you can find us at Blue Skies or Twitter or the Facebook group or Discord or whatever it is. And we'll see you next time with Dark Journey.
Good night.
Yeah, we can all fix this. It's not so bad that it's a problem. Just don't get too close to it. You know what? It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
/Chronicles of Dragonlance.
Read that again.